Hello and welcome. You watching News 9 Live with me, Neha Khanna, and joining me now is a very special guest. We have with us on Global Lens tonight Israel's ambassador to India, Naor Gilon, and he's here to take some questions on the ongoing Israel-Hamas war. Ambassador, welcome to News 9 Live.
Thank you, Neha. Thank you very much for having me.
Great to have you with us, sir, and thank you so much for making the time to take some questions. Let me begin by asking you, the war is now in its 6th month. Ramzan has begun. No ceasefire yet. More than 130 hostages are still trapped in Gaza, and the death toll in Gaza is mounting. The question on everyone's mind is, how much longer is this war likely to last, and has Israel managed to achieve its primary objectives in the war so far?
I think that from the beginning of the campaign, we set forward our targets, and we are very consistent about them. There were two main targets. One is making sure that Hamas will not be able to attack again, and this is by destroying its power and its rule in Gaza. And the second one is bringing back the hostages. So we achieved part of both. And we are very much determined to achieve all, meaning that we have to get to the leadership of Hamas. We have to get rid of them. There are thoughts that maybe we already hit yesterday one of the big rulers or leaders of Hamas. Over the time, we killed a lot of their field commanders, a lot of their terrorist organization, more than 10,000 people, according to our estimation, many more probably. And we do every day. We have these skirmishes and attacks, and we go underground and above ground. So we are there. Also, about 100 hostages were released also. We are there. We are continuing in the path of achieving both targets.
Are you confirming to us, Ambassador, that the number 2 Hamas leader has been killed?
I cannot confirm because Israel is checking.
Okay.
He was targeted by us, but it was underground tunnel. So still looking, you have to find the body.
Yes.
To make sure that the person is dead. In the past, we attacked places, and at the end we found out that people were still alive. So we are very cautious from assuming or saying that for sure when we are not sure about it yet.
Okay, since we are talking about fighting Hamas militarily, and Israel has said from the beginning we want to break the back of Israel by going after Hamas by going after its military infrastructure. I want to quote to you a report that was submitted in the US Congress yesterday. It's the US intelligence community report, which talks about the role of Prime Minister Netanyahu, and I'll come to that in a moment. But before that, I want to quote the part of the report which says Israel will struggle to defeat Hamas militarily, and I'm quoting them here. Israel probably will face lingering armed resistance from Hamas for years to come, and the military will struggle to neutralize Hamas's underground infrastructure, which allows insurgents to hide, regain strength, and surprise Israeli forces. This is the assessment of the US intelligence as per a report submitted in the US Congress. Your thoughts on this?
So first of all, it's very hard to fight a terror organization that is hiding behind its own population and under its own population. We have here a complex war that I think that no military in the world has confronted in the past, because we have 600 kilometers of underground tunnels where the Hamas terrorists and leadership and probably holding the hostages, all are there. So we have a dual war. We have a war above ground and underground. It is complicated. It is very hard because we don't want to have too many civilian casualties to minimize it. We do it very surgically, very slow, going down. We cannot now, if we find a shaft of a tunnel, we cannot blow it up because we are afraid that there will be hostages there. So we have to go in and physically check it before we can take action. It's very lengthy. It's very slow, but we are there in the direction because we have no alternative. I remind you that bigger armies than Israel try to fight in Afghanistan and in Iraq, and it's always hard to fight terrorists that are among civilian population. But we are doing it, and we are determined, because unlike others who went to fight them overseas, far away from home, for us it's home. The attack was on home. So we are fighting really for the home. That's why the motivation in Israel is so high. Yeah, it will take time. It's not going to happen in one day. But since we have no alternative, we are very much determined to win this war.
So if US intelligence assessment is that you could be fighting Hamas for years to come, does that mean this war could go on for years? What is your assessment?
No, I don't think that they were speaking of full-fledged war for years. You will have a guerrilla, probably, like we have today.
But Prime Minister Netanyahu has said the war will not be over till we've achieved complete victory over Hamas. What does that mean?
No, I think that once we get the leadership of Hamas and we are comfortable that we will not kill until the last terrorist. Okay, it's very hard to find them. They are mingling, they're going back to their homes and playing civilian, as if they are regular civilians. So we want to kill or to destroy most of the military infrastructure that they have and their leadership, who are also the people who planned and perpetrated October 7 attack on civilian population in Israel. So this is the aim. I'm not sure, I don't think that anyone is saying we will fight until we find the last terrorist.
But is there a timeline, Ambassador?
I don't know. The timeline is achieving the targets. For us, the timeline is the minute where we feel that we have neutralized most of the risk or all the risk for attacks into Israel and that we have hostages back. This is, for us, the timeline is success. There is no, we cannot define it in military terms. And again, also today in Judea and Samaria, where we are present, we have from time to time terrorists. It's not that, still also there, but we know how to deal with it when there is no huge infrastructure behind them of a military-like infrastructure like Hamas has.
So, you just referred to this, Ambassador. From the beginning, it's been said by Israel that one of the primary objectives of this war is to secure the safe release of all the hostages. Yes. More than 100 still remain in Gaza. Now, Hamas says that it seems like Israel is simply not interested in a ceasefire.
I think that it was very evident that the Americans, who are trying to be the go-betweens, said very clearly that Hamas is not interested. Hamas, they as from day one, and from history also before October 7, they never cared about their own population. They don't care about people being able to celebrate the Ramadan in a dignified and normal way. And they are trying to use, because during Ramadan usually in the Muslim world, the emotions are very high. It's a very emotional period. So they hope what they failed to do to get a full intervention of everyone around. I mean, Israel is occupied by all the pro-Iranian forces. It's all Iran is behind it. It's very clear that de facto we have a war of proxy with Iran, by proxy with Iran. Because all the elements that are engaging Israel, Hamas, Hisbah, the Shiites militias, both in Syria and Iraq, the Houthis, all of them are proxies of Iran. They are trained, financed, and equipped by Iran. So that's very, very clear. And what Hamas hoped is to create doomsday scenario where everyone is attacking into Israel. But you see that, for example, Hisbah is very much restricted into the border area, the skirmishes. Okay. And they hope, Hamas, that what will save them will be that there will be a full-fledged war because the emotions are high during Ramadan. I don't think it's going to happen. I think that Israel now is in very strong control and in high alert. And that's what they're trying to do. They don't care about the people in Ramadan. That's the truth.
They don't care about the Palestinians. Before I talk about the Palestinians, you care about the Israeli hostages. Are you not concerned they could end up as collateral damage in this war?
So I don't think that Hamas, think of, we had one soldier, Gilad Shalit, in the hands of Hamas for a few years. And at the end, after quite a few years, we paid a tremendous price of releasing very high-level terrorists that are today leading Hamas, by the way. So just to understand what happened then. So without military pressure on Hamas, there is no chance whatsoever that we will see the hostages. And some already, quite a few already, we declare them dead.
Yes.
The conditions they are in are inhumane. They are very old people there, very young children from the age of, one was 9 months old when he was hijacked, kidnapped, and now he's just over a year, and his brother is like 3-4 years old. Very young children to very old people, to wounded people, people who were taken wounded. The situation is terrible, and if we don't put military pressure on Hamas, they will keep them forever. They will take years and years.
Okay.
And, you know, there are malnutrition, no medicine. Red Cross did not visit them. No one visited them. No one knows anything about them. The number of violations of human rights there are tremendous. And we didn't even speak about sexual
we'll come to that, I promise you. We will. I know, Ambassador, you're a diplomat, not a politician, but I need to ask you this question. I'm quoting the same US intelligence community assessment report, which says, distrust of Prime Minister Netanyahu's ability to rule has deepened and broadened across the public, and we expect large-scale protests demanding his resignation and new elections. A different, more moderate government is a possibility. Your thoughts?
I think that in Israel we are in an internal disagreement for quite a long time, and it quieted down a little bit around the war because we have had to unite. And I think that we already start seeing more and more people coming out and demonstrating. That's part of being a vibrant democracy. You know, people have their own opinions. We are a democracy. As long as the government is elected and ruling by coalition, and now there is even a bigger coalition because Gantz came in with his party, and now it's a bigger majority. As long as this is the situation, the government is ruling. If there will be the public or the parliament will decide differently, there will be a different. As long as there is a democratically elected prime minister, he is leading the country. That's what democracy is all about.
Okay, now I have to ask you an important set of questions about President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu. President Biden has said in no uncertain terms that launching an offensive in Rafah would be a red line which Israel should not cross. He's also said Israel cannot have 30,000 more Palestinians dead. The UN chief has said a ground invasion into Rafah could lead to a slaughter. Yet we've heard just over the weekend Prime Minister Netanyahu saying Israel will push ahead with a military offensive in Rafah. I have two questions there. Number one, how soon could it happen? Number two, the question really is, where will the 1.5 million Palestinians who are sheltering in Rafah go?
So let's start maybe with saying a word about President Biden. I think that he defined himself as a non-Jewish Zionist. This is how he refers to himself, and I think that he proved himself as a huge friend of Israel from October 7 onwards, really, in an outstanding way. He's getting, you know, he's in a political campaign in the US for the presidency. He's getting some beaten a little bit of some of his base. Some others are supporting Israel very strongly. That's life. It's very tough. One has to understand, you know, you cannot stop. If we want to achieve what we set, you know, to destroy Hamas regime and everything, and the leadership, and bringing back the hostages, Rafah is part of it. You cannot say, okay, I took 70% of the territory, and I know that all the people escaped, the ones who didn't die, the terrorists who didn't die, escaped there and are now in tunnels there, took the hostages with them. So everyone now is in Rafah.
But you do realize, Ambassador, that these are the people who had been asked to evacuate northern Gaza by Israel. And now they're sheltering there. Where do they go?
I'm getting there. So the first, and speaking from the military point of view, there is no logic for everything. You will never reach your objectives if you let the leadership and the remaining, I don't know how many militants they have, 10,000, 15,000 militants, and with the hostages, hide there. It means that everything you did so far is a waste. Because they will wait, they know they're protected there by international community or by I don't know whom, and they will do nothing. Now, we need to go into Rafah, in order to achieve our goals, and we are working on a plan that will enable safe zones for the people of Rafah to go out, because also according to international law, you should give the people the opportunity to leave a place that is going to be a combat zone.
When you say go out, go where?
Into safe, we have a plan of preparing safe zones with tents.
Within Gaza or outside Gaza?
Within Gaza. There are parts of Gaza that are safe. We can keep them safe, can build their facilities to give basic needs of human beings. And this is the idea. We don't want to go into the 5 million people there and start shooting in between civilian population. But we need to do what we need to do, and we want to evacuate the people, not for our well-being. I mean, we are not doing carpet bombing. We are going in with soldiers, and that's why we are also losing quite a few soldiers on the way, every day almost. It's part of the campaign. It's very hard. But we are trying to minimize civilian casualties all the time. And, you know, we are doing our best in this.
You say you're doing your best, and you said President Biden has been a friend of Israel. There is no doubt he has been a friend of Israel, and he's staunchly supported you, especially since 7th October. But it's also true, Ambassador, that President Biden has been expressing his growing frustration with Prime Minister Netanyahu and his handling of the war, and he's been very public and vocal about it of late. Over the weekend, in an interview, this is not even a hot mic moment I'm talking about, in an interview, he said, I'm quoting him, Prime Minister Netanyahu is hurting Israel more than helping Israel. I think it's a big mistake. I want to see a ceasefire. Isn't its staunchest ally, President Biden, losing patience with Israel?
Look, war is a complicated game. It's not easy. People are dying, people are suffering. We have to do what we have to do to survive. I understand also the difficulties of the US, who was a strong supporter of Israel from day one, as I said before. There are the pressures inside, outside of the US. I understand also that side. But I think that President Biden understands Israel more than many people can understand. And he knows that we have to finish the work. I'm sure that deep inside, and again, it's not necessarily easy for him to sell it in a political campaign for the second presidency, but this is something that Israel has to do. Because if not, the next time we will have the October 7th style attack will be very soon. Because they understand that because they don't care about casualties. What they care about is what they were able to do, generate hate against Israel in all the world, generate anti-Semitism in levels that we haven't seen for many, many years. And Hamas will do it again. If we don't take the capability from them to do it again, they will do it. They will rebuild themselves. They will be the controllers of Rafah as long as they are there independently. Okay, they will have harder times, but they will use Rafah also as a base because they can build themselves, and they have an exit border there to other places, not only to Israel. They will build themselves again, rebuild, and use it as a basis for attack. And this we have to make sure doesn't happen.
Okay. Well, clearly President Biden, despite his support for Israel, is not very happy with Prime Minister Netanyahu. Currently, he even told a senator, we need to have a come to Jesus meeting. I'm sure you've seen that video already. But, you know, President Biden is one of those who has been warning his ally, Israel, that it risks losing international support over the mounting civilian casualties in Gaza. Now, according to the Gazan Health Ministry, the death toll has crossed 31,000. And these are figures that have been quoted also by President Biden, not just by us. We know Gazans are facing starvation. It's a humanitarian catastrophe, Ambassador, that you're well aware of. Are you not worried that President Biden is indeed right in saying that Israel has lost a lot of the support and sympathy that it had in the early days of the war after the 7th October attacks, that now this is an extremely unpopular war with country after country, including the West, saying enough is enough, too many people have died and this war needs to end?
So let's start with the numbers. I mean, the numbers that everyone is quoting are numbers of Hamas. And the numbers of Hamas are not differentiating between civilians and terrorists.
You know, they claim that a vast majority of these were actually women and children.
They don't differentiate between warriors and between civilians. So you don't have any differentiation. We say that we killed many more than 10,000 terrorists so far. This is not in the number. It's in the numbers, in this figure. So we don't know if the figure, and they have an interest of inflating figures, but I have no alternative numbers, so I cannot dispute or do anything else. We do know that we killed quite many. By the way, part of the fighters were 15, 16-year-old kids holding weapons and shooting at us. So that one has to understand that the figures are there. Now, about popularity, about losing, again, there is
about being isolated, Ambassador.
Isolated about everything. Yeah, you know, Jews are popular when they are suffering and they are weak, because after October 7, everyone has, not everyone, some even then couldn't show compassion to Israel, but many had compassion to Israel, the suffering country. There is one Jewish country in the world, and we are determined with our lives and blood and abilities to protect it, because this is only now when you see the outbreak of anti-Semitism in the world, you understand the importance of Israel for the well-being of Jews all around the world. Because they need to know that they have a country of their own, that if in time of urgency, to come back and to come back to their homeland, to Israel. So we are going to protect Israel. We are not in a popularity contest. We are in a contest in order to survive. It's about survivability. We have to do what we have to do. We didn't invite October 7. It was not aggravated in any way. We did nothing there. People in their holiday were butchered, raped, tortured in their homes in 30 civilian communities in Israel. And we will not let this happen again. We dislocate or we recommended to almost 200,000 Israelis to leave their homes because they were in danger zone, both around Gaza and in the northern border. And we have to make sure that our population can go back. Because if not, people will not want to live in Israel. It's Gaza, 7 kilometers from Gaza that were evacuated, or 4 or 5 kilometers from Lebanon border. And then the terrorists will go another, so it will be another. Israel is a tiny state that is coming into India about 150 times. We have to understand that we have to do what we have to do. If people don't like us because we are protecting ourselves, c'est la vie. What can we do? We can die, but I dislike this option. I think it's a less preferred option to die. I prefer being the tough guy who the world is saying you have to stop, you have to stop. Why do I have to stop? Did I eliminate the risk? Did I bring back the hostages? I didn't. I will stop when I do that.
The reason they're asking you to stop, Ambassador, is because too many people have died. Many of them were civilians.
But what can I do? You have a terror organization hiding behind those civilians. They're people, so to speak. And they are using them as a human shield in order to continue shooting at me. So what should I do? Let them shoot me and say, okay, I cannot do anything because they are there and there are casualties. By the way, the statistics I saw of experts saying that the civilian casualties are much lower than most of the wars in modern time that involved civilian population, including Iraq and Afghanistan. In the percentage of people dead between military and civilian and between the number of attacks and dead. So we are doing a very precision work, the best we can do. We are probably one of the most advanced and sophisticated militaries in the world. We are doing whatever we can to avoid it, but we cannot risk the life. A nation, a country has the number one principal responsibility is the security of its population. So what people are asking us, don't do your number one commitment of securing the lives of the population because there are the lives of others that you are on the process might kill. This is not an acceptable.
Not acceptable to you.
No.
I think everybody agreed earlier on that Israel had the right to defend itself. What it's been criticized for is what many have described as its disproportionate response. But since we've been talking about President Biden, and the reason I keep bringing him up is because he is your closest ally. And obviously, Israel needs US support. It is critical to this war as well. Now, while the US continues to provide military aid to Israel, what is evident, and it's been talked about ad nauseum in the media, is that there is a growing rift, evidently, between Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Biden. Now, I want to outline just a few of the issues on which there is a growing divergence. President Biden is repeatedly asking for a ceasefire. Prime Minister Netanyahu says the war will go on. President Biden has said the two-state solution is the only way forward. Prime Minister Netanyahu has rejected Palestinian statehood. Even on the issue of a post-war plan for Gaza, the two leaders just don't see eye to eye. Do you not believe this is a problem? The two closest allies in this war do not see eye to eye on most of the important issues today.
I think that they're very complex issues. I will tell you that, for example, the peace camp in Israel has disappeared. You know why? Because Gaza is an independent state, or Israel left Gaza, the disengagement in 2005. So almost 20 years, Gaza was, in the beginning, was left to the Palestinian Authority, who lost it through elections and violence. And from 2007, Hamas is there. And what did Hamas do with the state? What did they do? Did they build prosperity for the people? No, they used everything in order to build the facilities to fight Israel. It became a failed state, a terrorist state, And you will find very few people in Israel today that will want to go to a solution in the short term, the short run, when you don't have a partner, to giving anyone the ability to have self-control of a territory and turn it again into a base to attack Israel. So people have to understand in what situation Israel is. We are between the rock and the hard place. That's why we are so determined, and that's why everyone is coming to military, volunteering to go and fight the war, because they understand that there is no alternative. And I would say about Israel-US, and I've served in the US twice, that the relations are very strong. There were always differences. I was part of differences in the past between the two countries. The proof is in the taste of the pudding. The Americans are supporting Israel in all ways, and I believe that they will continue doing it because they understand. They maybe on the tactics they see differently, and they have their own reasoning. It's okay. We are the ones who have to live with the consequences. That's why we are very determined. And so far, the Americans went with us, and I'm sure that they will continue also in the future.
However, there is growing pressure on President Biden domestically. There is a lot of anger over the mounting death toll and Israel's handling of the war in America, not just among Arab Americans. Many Democrats are concerned about it, and many senators have even demanded that the Biden administration cut back aid to Israel. But we will leave that aside for now. Now, India has said, we condemn terrorism. We were amongst the first countries to come out and condemn October 7. But India has also said, so many civilian casualties in Gaza are simply unacceptable, and India remains committed to a two-state solution. How do you view India's stand, Ambassador?
I think that India was very, very strong in its objection to terrorism. We appreciate it very much. It started with Prime Minister Modi already in the afternoon of October 7, before we understood the magnitude of the disaster. I have no problem about humanitarian aid and assistance. We are doing the utmost to bring as much humanitarian aid as possible into Gaza. The limitation today is not connected to Israel, not because of our limitations. The limitations, the fact that Hamas is taking over a lot of the aid, and attacks on trucks by population, a lot of problems in how you do it. But in general, we are for, and I will tell you something else, we are also for a political solution at the end. And as I said before, we'll see what kind of political solution we get to. So we don't think that the military solution is the end game. Now we have to do the military, to take military action. We didn't leave Gaza in 2005 in order to come and reconquer Gaza. That was not in the cards. We left Gaza alone even when they shot at us. The attack on Israel was not the first attack. Every few months they used to shoot rockets at Israel, tens and tens and tens of thousands of rockets. And if not hundreds of thousands of rockets over the years. And we didn't go and conquer until they did the huge mistake of this invasion that was really, Israel could do nothing but go in. And we want that in Gaza, we don't want to rule Gaza. We want that there will be some kind of a civilian body.
And that was my next question. What is Israel's post-war plan for Gaza? You keep saying we don't want to reoccupy, we don't want to govern. Who will?
No, so I will say again, on the civilian side, we don't want to control the lives of 2 million Gazans. We have no wish whatsoever to do that. So our hope is that we will find a local international body that will run the daily life of people. Unfortunately now, I don't see anyone taking over security. So for the time being, until we can create, together with this ruling body, a new reality that will enable us also to live from a military point of view and live stable under hands of serious, responsible actors, this is the time that we will also live from a military point of view. But again, we didn't go back to Gaza, we were pulled back into Gaza. This was not in our plans whatsoever. We tried to avoid it for years. This is part of the complaints on the Israeli governments, that they avoided dealing with the mounting building of power by the terrorists of Hamas in Gaza, because they wanted to avoid going into a war or conquering or anything of the sort. Well, of course,
you'll also have to deal with the question of the intelligence failure at some point in the future. But few more quick questions for you, Ambassador. Now, your critics say Israel wants to scatter the Palestinians, drive them out of Gaza, have other countries in the Middle East like Egypt resettle them. By doing that, Israel will end up displacing the Palestinians from their homeland and doing exactly what they've been accused of being their primary motive. How would you respond to that?
You know, all along the interview, you are throwing things and leaving them there as a fact.
No, I'm asking you questions.
No, but this is another one, and I have to relate because every time I say something, you finish it with this, but others say and go on. No, my answer is the opinion of Israel. Your opinion or other people's opinion, we leave them aside. Coming to that, we are 6 months into the war. Was any one person displaced? That's the answer. We didn't displace anyone. We are 6 months into the war. People want us to finish now. So now the thinking is that Israel is going to displace. We didn't do it for 6 months, and now we will start. I think it's very clear that it's part of the allegation game and people being afraid. We are doing nothing of the sort. We want to move them inside Gaza because it's our duty to make sure that they can escape the fight that we are planning with Hamas in Rafah. This is the point here, and this is what we did in the north before we went in. This is life. This is life. We have to do it, but we are not pushing people into neighboring countries.
That will not happen. You mentioned the threat from Hezbollah and the Houthis. Is Israel planning to expand the conflict beyond Gaza and target Hezbollah in an effort to create a security corridor? Is that part of the plan?
What we want is to enable our population to go back to the border, the people who live there. Now, Hezbollah is a few folds stronger than Hamas. And always we had the scenario of infiltration like happened on October 7 from Hezbollah. This was the thing that we were afraid of always. We cannot tell people, go back to the border in Lebanon when nothing has changed. They destroyed already more than 300 civilian houses of people. And, it's a situation where if there will not be a change, people will not go back. People will not go back. It's a big problem for Israel. People are living in a hotel. Children are having makeshift schools in the hotels. That's where they are. And we have to change this reality. And what we are asking is resolution passed by the UN Security Council 1701, which called Hezbollah to go beyond northern to the Litani River. We don't want to have Hezbollah people, and the UN didn't want to have Hezbollah people, and there UNIFIL, including Indian contingency and Southern Lebanese army, the Lebanese army can control that strip. That was 1701. That's what we want to do. We have to change the reality. We hope to do it through diplomatic means.
But you could do it militarily as well?
If we will have to. If no diplomatic solution is found, we'll have to put the military pressure, because otherwise we will be in a situation that our population refuses to go back to living next to the border.
Ambassador, I have a quick couple of India-specific questions. Has India supplied drones manufactured by a private company to Israel in recent months?
I'd rather not go into these issues. I think we never speak about arms trade and sales. We never spoke. You don't see numbers, you don't see. And I don't want to make an exception here.
Okay, and has Israel gone slow vis-a-vis its military supplies to India because of its own war with Hamas?
In general, no. In general, we are trying to meet deadlines. I don't think that there is a significant slowdown.
Okay. Talking about Prime Minister Netanyahu, he's being accused of prolonging the war. His critics say that, it's not my opinion, that he's prolonging the war for his own political interest to save his job because he doesn't want to face an election. He knows he's going to lose it. How would you respond to that?
I'm saying very simply, we set targets on the onset. He's not alone, by the way. He has a coalition today with Benny Gantz, as I mentioned before. And once the targets will be reached, we will stop. And we cannot stop before the targets are reached. And I think that there is a very wide support in Israel to this approach.
There's a new video around what deepfake can do.
We have seen a trailer of this a few days back.
Rumors should not be only on the platform.
We'll have to wait and see how those play out.
Hindenburg's report cannot be taken as gospel of truth.
It's probably the best kept secret in India.
Family-owned business, which has been extremely clinical in their approach. They have not hesitated ever to kill their darlings
typical to a South Indian business empire, I think they've shunned the limelight almost deliberately.
Start with the end in mind. You need to know where you want to reach. Every morning that we wake up, we are exercising our choice. The destiny is decided. The results are known that I'm going to win. Life of a goalkeeper is something which has always intrigued me.
When you come into a stadium, this is the highest level of pressure.
When I set out to do something, I decide in my mind that failure is not an option.
What you feel very strongly about, those are the stories to tell.
I have a mind which is absolutely restless.
Mind and body are entangled sensations.
That brings me back to golf. It's an amazing game.
This is not a perfect game. You only learn from them.
If you have a formula to a success, then you can replicate it.
I feel this is my first step. I'm starting now.
Winner is first born in the mind. I think, therefore I am. We are all about our mind.
This and more. Streaming on News 9 Plus. Subscribe and get free vouchers.
जानना है तो देखिए, समझना है तो सुनिए, सीखना है तो पूछिए, और कमाना है तो खरीदिए। जानकारी, सलाह और निवेश सब एक ही सुपर ऐप पर। पैसे का सवाल है तो जवाब है मनी 9। आजादी पैसे की, अभी डाउनलोड करें।
Why is the state not looking at putting an embargo on that?
As a Telangana person, I will not accept.
How do ordinary folks deal with this?
Ambassador, before I ask you about the UN report on sexual violence, one question is, how would you respond to those who say that the Jewish people who were once victims of the Holocaust are today carrying out, quote unquote, a genocide of the Palestinian people? This is something that has been said repeatedly in recent times at the UN and the International Court of Justice.
I think it's one of the worst things I can hear. I'm a son of a Holocaust survivor. My father is still alive. He was born in Germany before the war. He lost his father, he lost most of the family in the Holocaust. And this is part of the dehumanization of the Jewish people and the Jewish state. It's anti-Semitism, just anti-Semitism. They think that by turning the victim, Israel, into the aggressor, you either justified what the Nazis did to the Jews, or you do dehumanization of the Jewish people of Israel. And this is, for me, it's purely anti-Semitism.
Ambassador, a recent UN report said its team found reasonable grounds to believe that Hamas terrorists committed acts of sexual violence, including rape and sexualized torture, during the 7th October attacks in Israel. The details are, of course, quite horrific and chilling. Many of the hostages have also been subjected to sexual violence. How do you think the international community needs to address this?
Well, first of all, I have to commend Pramila Patten, a neighbor from Mauritius, the first UN person who is speaking about the Israeli side. And she went to Israel and with a big team, and they interviewed many people. They found out what we knew from day one, the atrocities. The problem, by the way, of not having evidence is the fact that Hamas, after gang raping women, and we have some people, they shot them. They killed them while raping, after raping corpse. There was everything. Everything was there. All the most horrific things. And you know, our heart goes out, okay, to these people, these women who died in a horrific way, but also for the women hostages, as you mentioned, and also the report says that they have evidence, strong evidence, about rape of some of the hostages, and they have a good reason to believe that it's going on until today. So this is what is heart-wrenching. I'm telling you that the whole thing is another proof to the fact that it was an ISIS-like operation. This was a hate operation. A lot of the evidence is from their body cams. They put it live on social media. They did it intentionally to create fear in Israel. And this is terrible. And it's also, by the way, the fact that Israeli women, and we are, women in Israel are very, very strong. Traditionally in Judaism, from the Bible, there are quite a few women who were heroes in the Bible. I will not go into names here. Esther the queen was one of them, but there are many women. And also in modern history in Israel, we had Hannah Senesh during Second World War, who was a paratrooper who went from Israel to paratroop in Europe and saved Jews and was executed by the Nazis. And we have a lot of stories in Golda Meir. And also this war is the war of the women. On October 7, a tank unit, only women tank unit. It's a new test case that we did in Israel because we are slowly, more and more doors are opening for women in our military. Women were the heroes of, part of the heroes of October 7 and still going on. So in general, I think it's a time of empowerment of women in Israel. And we always were active around the world in human rights in other places. Jews were always, South Africa, in the US with Martin Luther King. Jews were always in the front line. And now when the Israeli women, these strong women are coming out and saying the world doesn't believe. So we have to, when someone is saying I was raped, now proof that you were raped. This is unacceptable. This is part, I think, of this dehumanization of Israel. I saw now stickers in New York on the social media, rape is a something like rape is a legitimate resistance or something like that. So it's a disaster turn that the world is taking. Dehumanization of Israel, anti-Semitism, Jews' blood is different than others' blood. That's unfortunately the world we go into 75 years or I don't know how many after the Holocaust. It's really, really terrible.
I have to say that we were all absolutely horrified when those details of the sexual violence came out. But in the past, Ambassador, you've talked about 2 women from Kerala who were caregivers to an elderly couple on that day of the attack, and they also turned into their lifesavers. You've called them Indian superwomen. You want to tell us about them?
Yeah, so bravery of women, the age of bravery of women is not only in Israel but also in India. These 2 women were staying with their patients, usually elderly people, very limited in mobility and everything, and they stayed and defended them, held the door to prevent the terrorists from coming into the houses. So these are really, really brave women. And I'll tell you that there is I saw a poll not too long ago about attitudes both in Israel towards India and India towards Israel. These are among the highest of the world. In Israel, the highest regards in comparison to other countries towards India was in Israel. So 70% of the population were pro-Indian or loving India. And also in India, I saw here different polls that showed that there is very, very high favoritism towards Israel. So even after October 7, I saw. So I think that this is a very important element, and it's another story, these 2 brave women, it's another story in a link of stories that are connecting the Jewish people and the Indian people for many years, starting with Jews coming to Kerala, to Cochin and this area more than 2,000 years ago, continuing with Jews immigrating to India over different periods from different places in the world, playing an important role here in the society. People like David Sassoon, his foundations are until today helping the people of Mumbai, like General Jacob, who is buried just behind our embassy, with the hero of the 71 war. Jews were part and parcel, and then First World War, Indian Army, Anglo-Indian Army, but Indian soldiers actually fought to release from the Ottoman Empire what 30 years later became Israel. So I think the link is going on and still going on. And is Israel helping India over the years when others refused with weapons and agriculture and technology and the people-to-people element in our relations? I think This is the secret ingredients of our wonderful relations.
There is no doubt about that. This relationship remains strong. Final question, Ambassador, I promise you. You know, this war is to secure the citizens of Israel. That's what the government has said from the beginning. You've said that too. But are you not concerned that this war is enough to radicalize an entire generation of Palestinians?
But what is the alternative? I hear all the questions. I get the point. I get the line. Okay, what do you want? You want me to open and say, kill me? I'm afraid you will radicalize. I'm afraid you will not like me. What do I have to do? We are 7 million Jews, less than 7 million Jews, living in the heart of a very, very big Muslim majority of countries, more than 50 Muslim countries in the world, one small Israel. And what do we have to do? To swim? I mean, we have no borders. We have nowhere to go. Swim to Cyprus, a few hundred kilometers, the closest we can swim. That is not a Muslim country. And what is the alternative to Israel? Our alternative is to be strong and fight and defend ourselves. The fact that people don't like us because of that, yes, they prefer us dead. I understand that. But I have no intention of losing my life or my children or my grandchildren's life. So we are left without alternatives, and we are doing whatever we need to protect ourselves. And the fact that people dislike it, they would like peace and tranquility to be in the world. I hope they also hoped it before October 7, not only after October 7. We are doing what we need to do. We grew up, unfortunately, fighting, and we will continue fighting, I guess, all our lives, because there are never solutions. We do peace with one country or one element, and then another attacks us. So we are never, okay, that's the reality of our lives and our survivability. We are strong, we are resilient, and we'll go on.
Well, this is a complex war. These are complex questions. The world wants to see an end to this war, but we'll see how it goes. We appreciate the fact that you took the time to candidly answer all the questions. Thank you so much, Ambassador, for talking to us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Sheer scale of India. This is the largest country in the world.
The fastest growing economy, so there's huge fascination and excitement.
It all depends on the leadership and what they're doing for the public and the people.
It's only Modi magic. He makes other countries stand up and listen. Is the way he's been able to communicate.
Our relationship is prime for a momentous future. That future is today.
People called him a chaiwala. Look at him now. He's running a big country.
I do not think the United States can think of moving forward without India along its side.
I came 7 years ago. Now 7 years ago, the country here wasn't the same. Toilets weren't adaptable to the people that were coming. Now, I came after 7 years. You can see rickshaws have actually got the mobile phone connection. Ubers are here.
India has moved from a country that maybe 30 years ago was perceived as producing low-value goods to being one of the world's top countries at the cutting edge of technology, of the green revolution.
It's catching up to the rest of the world very, very quickly, and probably a little bit too fast for a lot of the bigger nations.
It's a country that I think everyone wants to do business with.
India's meteoric economic rise makes it an inspiration for the developing world. But it wasn't the story a decade ago, when India was dubbed one of the fragile 5 economies. There was massive corruption, Poverty was almost at 24%, and India ranked 10th among the world's top economies. But under Prime Minister Narendra Modi's leadership, India has become one of the fastest growing economies. It's the world's 5th largest economy now. Poverty has dipped to nearly 15%. But the big question is, how did it happen?
It all depends on the leadership and what they're doing for the public and the people. If the person is there genuine and doing good for the society, I think other countries looked at that first.
There's been huge reforms to the financial system, from everything from making it a lot easier for the poorest people in India to even have bank accounts, which just means that they have a chance to actually